At first, the scholarship element took on such a turn. I was so excited by languages. I studied Greek and Hebrew and Sanskrit, and we started doing biblical higher criticism. I found that simply fascinating. But I must pay tribute at this point to the people who grounded me again. My first posting, as I said, was in a remote rural area. Not very remote in that sense, because it was on the main road, but the congregations themselves were off the beaten path. So here I am with my urban background, with my educational background, having studied in a rather prominent school in Bangalore, having spent 5 years with the Jesuits doing my bachelor in science, having spent 4 years at one of India's finest seminaries. With all this in my mind, I was brought back to earth and grounded in the heat and the dust of India by the village people of Gauri Bidanur pastorate. I spent a year. It's the equivalent of internship. I was called an exposure candidate. I had a pastor or a presbyter in charge who came once a month to conduct the communion services and also have the equivalent of the parish council meetings. But I was the one on the spot doing the regular worship service, prayer meetings, and everything else. I wasn't ordained. At the end of the first year, I was ordained deacon, and I served a second year as a deacon in that parish. I could baptize, but I couldn't celebrate communion. So these people, India's poor, India's vulnerable, people who came from what were considered at that time untouchable backgrounds, these are the people who showed me, these are the people who embodied for me what ministry really is. My students joke that you've never been able to get away from them, and that's true. I have never been able to get away, and I don't want to get away, because these are the people who taught me lessons for life. The poor, the vulnerable, the marginalized, the so-called least taught me the centeredness of living a life of faithfulness. I continued to have links with them even after I became a theological teacher, tried to recreate that excitement for my students, went back very often. Part of my course here at this seminary in the Introduction to the History of Christianity is a slideshow from that village, where I tried to show my students at LTSP where ministry is grounded, the local. Even as we do world Christianity and the history of Christianity, I bring them back with me to a village congregation in India to give them that picture. So that's part of my faith formation, growing up in the church, reading, being part of church services, seminary, and then working among India's poor.